Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to what if we removed the United States. In the thumbnail was literally just the US land just being removed and ocean there. I think I done a reaction somewhat similar to this before, and it sort of spoke about how the ocean current would change, and I wasn't really looking at it to be like that. I was more looking at the video to try and be about how, I don't know, how would the political landscape of the world change, how would, things like that. I don't know, just yeah, pretty much political landscape. So I'm just adjusting everything. And then the video sort of focused on how the ocean currents would change and all stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, that's not what I was really looking at. So we're gonna see this. Hopefully, this focuses more on what I actually want to look at. But yeah, this should be an interesting video. Obviously, the US is involved in, I would say, everything in this on this planet in terms of global, I don't know, relations or I don't know, politics, etc. But yeah, they're involved in a lot. So if we remove the US, what would change? I mean, China would probably have more of a chokehold in the world. They've already got a chokehold, to be fair, but an even larger one. Russia would probably have more, I don't know, control or whatever it is. These things would be different. But yeah, let's check this out. And also, will this be like, what if we removed the United States and they were never here to start with, or if we remove them at the current stage that we're at? Because if we never had the US, then obviously maybe world wars would have ended a lot differently. I mean, they definitely would have. And stuff like that. So yeah, we're gonna see what angle this comes at. Please just don't go and talk about ocean currents changing and all this stuff, because I can't be asked for that. But yeah, we're gonna check this out and see what this video has to say.
What would happen if the United States were to magically disappear? Well, the effects would be unbelievably far-reaching. It would completely and utterly reshape the planet physically, politically, and financially. But who would suffer and who would thrive? What would our new world look like? And who would replace the power vacuums left behind? In this hypothetical scenario, we will remove everything American, ranging from the people to its land to even its companies like McDonald's.
Okay.
So we've now snapped our fingers and removed the United States of America. This is how our new world looks. So we have just removed over 9.1 million kilometers squared of land from Earth. That's roughly 6% of all of Earth's land. We've also lost around 347 million people. That's just over 4% of all humans on the planet. Indonesia now becomes the third most populated country in the world, behind India and China.
So it's mad how highly populated Indonesia is. I didn't know there was that many people there.
Things first, let's first dissect the physical changes that have now occurred. So Canada has now become an island. Its southern border now sits on the coast, with the eastern parts of the country touching the Atlantic and the western the Pacific. The US is Canada's biggest trading partner, so of course it would be detrimental to the Canadian economy. However, where Canada would benefit from is its newly opened ocean access. The border between the US and Canada to the south spans nearly 9,000 kilometers, granting Canada a vast new stretch of coastline. This would significantly enhance the country's trading opportunities, especially considering that many of its major cities such as Winnipeg, Montreal, Toronto and the capital Ottawa are located not far from this newly accessible coastline. With Canada losing one of their biggest allies, who happens to be perhaps the most powerful country on Earth, it would lose a huge margin of security and safety in terms of global power. However, with it now becoming an island, land invasions are now no longer possible, so it's not all doom and gloom for the Canadians. A similar story applies to Mexico, who now no longer has a land border to its north. Unlike Canada, however, Mexico does not become an island. Again, just like Canada, the US is Mexico's biggest trading partner, with an incredible 75% of exports going to the US alone, meaning Mexico's economy would likely collapse. But after a few decades of turmoil, Mexico might see some new benefits from its newly gained ocean access.
75% of their exports go to the US. What sort of? I'm trying to think of what exports will come from Mexico. I assume it's like maybe like tropical fruits and vegetables. I'm trying to think what sort of things Mexico manufactures. Like spices? I don't really know. I mean, I'm trying to think of what like is made in Mexico. You know what? Let's just search it up. What does Mexico export? This sounds so bad. Such bad English. You know what I'm trying to say, Google. vehicles. I guess maybe yeah, because Mexico has cheaper labor, so then they can make a lot of things, and then it just gets transported to the US. So vehicles, electrical machinery, crude petroleum. So vehicles as a major automotive supplier to the US. Damn. Machinery, agricultural products. God damn, I can't talk. Beverages, oh yeah, alcoholic beverages. I'm thinking of like Corona. Isn't that a Mexican alcohol? Yeah, actually might not be. I don't know. Sounds Spanish though, so maybe it's from Spain. There's not actually anything saying food. Oh, agricultural products there is. Okay, so it was a lot. I didn't realize that Mexico had such a, I don't know, such a close link to the US in terms of like exporting and stuff. I knew it was obviously going to be large, but 75% of their economy coming from the US in terms of exports is crazy.
Like Canada, this opens new trading routes and options. With the removal of the US, Mexico and Canada, for that matter, can now use the space where the US once existed to drill for resources and fish, potentially boosting their economies.
Can fish boost your economy that much?
It's hard to argue against the fact that the US is quite easily the most powerful country on Earth. In 2023, the US's military spending was $916 billion.
Damn, that's crazy. That is crazy. I mean, looking at this list, they literally combined. They spend more than all of these countries combined, which is crazy to think about. The UK is 6th. Damn.
That's roughly the same as the 9 next countries combined.
There you go.
Or 37% of all military spending on the planet. Now, if the US were to magically disappear, then
involved in that, is that like spending that they then, like, for example, they'll send money to Ukraine? Is that involved in military spending, or is that in another sort of thing itself? Because if that's involving military spending, if that's involved in the spending, then like obviously lowers the amount that they spend on their armies and stuff. But if that's not involved in it, then god damn, that's a lot of money.
This would leave a gigantic power vacuum.
It's still a lot of money
in many different regions. It would severely weaken NATO and, to be honest, any alliance that the Americans are part of. Rivals of the US like Russia and China would immediately gain an advantage, with probably China becoming the world's new superpower. Its military spending, size, population and economy would be impossible for anyone to compete with. Countries that are heavily sanctioned and held down by the US would also be very happy with them ceasing to exist. NATO and the EU, well, Europe as a whole, have now lost their most powerful member and ally, leading to huge anxiety across the continent. This would likely result in NATO pouring significantly more resources into the alliance. China could invade Taiwan, and Russia could use military force to regain territories such as the Baltics. With the US disappearing, the countries of Latin America are no longer overshadowed. They may see this as their chance to prevail. It's likely that Brazil would win this charge due to its size, population and economy being by far...
That is a fucking incredible picture. This is like, I think in terms of like, mate, this is unreal. How the fuck? I think this is like the best place that anyone could ever visit. The view, obviously, you got the massive statue, but this is crazy. Look at the fucking scenery here. This is Rio, isn't it? Bloody hell, man. Get me to Rio ASAP. You got the beach here. I mean, this fucking hell, I'm shocked. This is a crazy picture. Bloody hell.
Are the largest in the region. It would now compete with Canada as the Western Hemisphere's most powerful nation. Without the watchful eye of the Americans, North Korea may continue and in fact substantially invest into its nuclear program.
Oh god.
It may see the loss of America as an opportunity to even invade South Korea whenever it likes, or at least gain some power over them. The world of technology would also crumble in the event of losing America. At the time of making this...
So we'd have no Apple, no Nvidia. Nvidia, bloody hell, Nvidia's... Well, where is Nvidia's like insane value come from? I knew it was always a very high value because like obviously they like involved in like computers and stuff. Is it to do with AI? Because they've suddenly just boomed. I should have put stocks in Nvidia, man. But you look at this. Literally the top 5 are all American. And these are all like essential things that everyone uses day to day. And then you got Facebook. I don't use Facebook, I'll be honest. That's not for me, but it's a big platform. Tesla. And yeah, I don't really know what Broadcom is, but yeah, Tesla as well.
This video, 8 of the 10 most valuable companies on Earth are from the US, with the likes of Apple, Microsoft and Meta having quite literally billions of users around the world. Rough estimates suggest that up to 70% of the world use products from these 3 companies alone. Losing them would cause absolute chaos. Similar to military power, this would leave a huge vacuum where companies likely from Europe or China would seek to become the new tech overlords. Now, losing the US
It'll
also
definitely be
means
China.
we lose Hollywood and its studios.
So now we're getting into culture as well.
The US is believed to be responsible for up to 30% of the global film industry revenue. Now, this is a vacuum where probably China couldn't gain dominance due to the fact that most Chinese movies are in Mandarin, which isn't too widely spoken.
I feel like the UK could do quite well from this. I mean, look, hey, we don't compete with the US in terms of films, but we have a few decent films
Outside of the country. With the United Kingdom having a pretty solid entertainment industry, it could potentially snatch the crown from the Americans. Now, it isn't just the film industry, but pretty much every industry on Earth.
Music, I mean, food, like you said, like fast food chains, which probably would actually benefit the world, but in terms of like just how many people eat them, like eat from them fast food chains, it would leave a massive hole. Like, I do wonder, how could you change that?
That's dominated by America, ranging from fashion brands to music, and of course, the thing that it is the king of, fast food. Losing America and everything American means the world loses a lot of its fast food choices. Out of the top 20 biggest fast food brands by number,
Mixu ice cream and tea, China. I guess this is maybe popular in like Asia, East Asia. I'm not sure. Luckin Coffee. I'm looking at the Chinese ones. Wallace, Tim Hortons. I've definitely heard of Tim Hortons. There's some in the UK, I think, and my Canadian friend was obsessed with it. Okay, we're now looking at the US one. So McDonald's. God damn, there's a lot of Starbucks. Oh yeah, I guess the coffee places, right? Subways tend to be quite small, so that makes sense. KFC's, there's a lot of those. Burger King, pizza, 18k. God damn. Papa John's is in the top 20. Jesus Christ.
Number of stores, the US is responsible for 16 of them.
Damn.
Quite interestingly, however, they don't have the number 1 position, who belongs to Mixu Ice Cream and Tea from China. Now, in this scenario, if we lose the US, we lose its currency and economy too, which would be astronomically catastrophic. At the time of making this video, the US economy accounts for roughly a quarter of the world's GDP. Its sudden absence would lead to a massive economic collapse, disrupting trade, financial markets and supply chains, especially to its biggest trading partners. With its removal, China now becomes the world's largest economy, accounting for just a little under a quarter of the global GDP at the time of making this video. Now, the dollar isn't just the currency of the United States, it's the backbone of global trade. Countries all around the world use the dollar for transactions, and central banks hold it as a reserve to keep their economies stable. There are also 11 countries around the world who use it as their official.
What the fuck? Ecuador, El Salvador, Liberia. I think I knew about Liberia. Liberia confuses me because you look at the flag and it is like it is very similar to the US flag. There is a link between Liberia and the US, I think. I don't know what it is. I mean, they use the same dollar or they use the same currency. Yeah, I wonder what that's about. Panama. Yeah, this is there's a lot of countries that use it. I mean, it says they use them alongside their own currencies. El Salvador alongside Bitcoin. What the fuck? Okay. Informal users, what does that mean? I don't really know what informal users means. Official currency, so they use it there, so you can use the USD there, but then the official currency is a different currency, I guess.
Official currency. Without the dollar, global markets would be thrown into turmoil. Nations would scramble to find a new currency to rely on, creating massive uncertainty. But which currency would replace the dollar? Well, my guess is the euro, as so many countries already use it, and it's the second most traded currency on Earth. The Chinese would of course love it to be their own currency, which is gaining traction already. However, with the currency not being too favourable outside of China, it would likely be the euro. Without the US, there will be a significant drop in aid around the world. This is one thing that the US seriously excels at. In 2023, the US donated 9.4 billion US dollars in humanitarian aid around the world.
Jesus.
That's about 36% of global spending.
So I guess then this doesn't link to the military spending, which I didn't know if it did or not, but I guess that answers the question.
When it comes to total...
Wait, let's see the list again. Germany spend a lot for its GDP. Where does Germany's go? Like, I assume the United States goes to like Israel and Ukraine, and a lot of the European Commission and the UK and stuff will go to the same, mainly probably Ukraine. But Germany's, is it just to Ukraine and Israel or what? Because Germany's got a high. I was just not expecting to see Germany in terms of like the GDP. Obviously, it's a wealthy country. But in terms of the percentage of the GDP that they spend, that's quite a high amount.
6% of global spending. When it comes to total foreign aid, which includes military spending, this figure was 66 billion US.
Oh, so maybe that was other stuff then. Countries that received the most aid. So the United States provided 68 billion foreign aid. Bloody hell. Ukraine 16.4 billion. So it's spread between a lot of countries.
US dollars, with Ukraine receiving a quarter of that alone. Without this aid, Ukraine would likely not be able to hold off the Russian forces, leading to a Russian win in the war. Developing countries such as Ethiopia, Somalia and South Sudan see sizable donations from the US, meaning without it, they'd likely see poverty levels rise. Now, one could argue that losing the US is a good thing due to its fossil fuel usage. The country is responsible for 12% of all CO2 emissions after all. However, the US is on the right trajectory. Its emissions have fallen by around 21%.
Fallen by 21%. Look at India's and China's, how much they've raised by. Oh, they don't give a shit, do they?
Since the year 2000.
34% of the emissions from China, mate. That is ridiculous. I mean, look, there's like, what, way over 1 billion people. But they don't have any like signs of slowing it down, that's for sure.
It's not perfect, but it...
Look how the European Union is like sort of just combined as one country. That's an interesting one. Damn, that is wild.
Is heading in the right direction. Also, in losing the US, we lose around $93 or so billion that it invests yearly in renewable energy, alongside all the startups that are building products and technology to make the world and country a greener place. The US also produces around 11% of renewable energy on Earth. So by removing them, yes, we decrease emissions, but we lose a lot of positives too. So there are some of the...
Also, fresh water as well, right? We'll lose a lot of fresh water, although I think most of the fresh water in the world's in Canada, to be fair.
Things that could potentially happen if the US were to magically disappear. Which side of the fence
This definitely
are you
went
on?
into more like topics that I'm more interested in. It's not a thing that's ever going to happen, right? It's just an interesting thing that I guess just shows just how much the US really does, like, is involved in like the things that we maybe don't really realize, like our phones and stuff, you know. Turns out we didn't have to physically remove it to achieve most of the effects you mentioned. Canadian here, can't wait for this update to drop. Fabulous, when can we do it? Bloody hell. Portugal has entered the Sea of Canada. Take that for myself. The world would be a more peaceful and less ignorant place. I just find that such a mad comment. Like, do you really know what you're talking about? The world has probably the most peaceful it's ever been. Like, when we really think about it, the world's probably the most peaceful point. Maybe not now currently with like, what's happening, but the last like 70, 80 years in terms of like wars and stuff, it's just like countries have been fighting for hundreds of years. I feel like, maybe I'm speaking because I don't experience it. I don't really know, but I feel like in terms of worldwide wars and stuff breaking out, we're at a point now where it's way better than it was, again, World War II, World War I times, or before that when countries were colonizing each other and all this sort of stuff, or European countries were colonizing other countries, you know? We're at a point now, or like even before that, where like the Mongols were taking over the world. You know, all of this stuff, I think we're at a point now where we're probably at a level of peacefulness that it's the highest it's ever been. Again, obviously, some countries have a lot of terrible things still going on. So I am speaking from someone in this position now. But come on now, man. Don't leave a comment like that and not actually really have any leg to stand on. But anyway, we're going to finish it there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this reaction. What are your thoughts on this? And until next time, like, subscribe, and peace.